Okay, so today we're going to talk about one of the most incredible scientific journeys ever undertaken. We're talking about the huge worldwide mission to read our very own instruction manual, the Human Genome Project.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if we had the complete blueprint, every single instruction needed to build and run a human body? It's a breathtaking idea, right? Well, that's exactly the idea that sparked a massive scientific revolution.
And that blueprint, that instruction manual, is what we call the genome. It's the whole shebang, the complete set of our genetic code. It's all written in a simple four-letter alphabet of DNA chemicals, A, G, C, and T. For us humans, figuring this out meant decoding that sequence across all 46 of our chromosomes. Now, to give you a sense of just how massive this challenge was, that's the number of letters in the human genome. 3 times billion. Seriously, if you were to print that out, the stack of paper would be as tall as a 17-story building. Just reading and understanding all of that is a task of almost unimaginable scale. So, how in the world do you even start a project that huge? Well, you launch what's basically the biological version of a moonshot. The Human Genome Project, or HGP for short, wasn't something one lab could do. It wasn't even something one country could do. No way. It was this enormous international effort that brought together 20 different institutes from all over the world. The US, the UK, France, Germany, Japan, and China were all involved. So let's kind of walk through the timeline here. The whole thing officially kicked off in 1990. The plan? It was going to take 15 years and cost about $3 billion. And for a while, it was this steady, collaborative thing. But then, 8 years in, a totally unexpected new player jumps into the ring, and boom, everything changed. The mission suddenly turned into this super high-stakes race. And this wasn't just any race, for bragging rights or scientific glory. This was a race that was going to decide the future of genetic information itself. So in 1998, this brilliant and, let's be honest, pretty controversial scientist named Craig Venter got impatient. He had been part of the public project, but he thought it was moving way too slowly. So he left and started his own private company, Celera Genomics. With over $300 million in private funding, Celera made this incredibly bold promise. They were going to sequence the entire genome faster, cheaper, and better than the public effort.
And this slide, this is where you really see the clash of ideas. The public HGP was all about open science. They released all their data for free every single day. Celera, on the other hand, planned to patent genes and then sell access to their data. They also used a completely different technique. While the public project was carefully, methodically mapping the genome piece by piece, Celera used a new, much riskier method called shotgun sequencing. They basically blew the genome into millions of little bits and used supercomputers to try and piece it all back together. It was a huge, huge gamble.
So you see what was at stake here, right? It became this massive competition between two totally different ways of doing science. One was all about open collaboration for the good of everyone. The other was about private innovation and making a profit. And the core question was, who should own the blueprint of humanity? Okay, so the pressure was on. This intense rivalry pushed both sides to work faster than ever before, and it all led to this really dramatic conclusion. The big turning point came in March of 2000. People were getting really worried that Celera would patent huge chunks of our DNA. So President Bill Clinton and the UK's Prime Minister Tony Blair made this joint announcement. They said, nope, the human genome belongs to everyone. It's the common heritage of all humanity. You can't patent it, and the data has to be free for everybody. That declaration sent absolute shockwaves through the stock market. Biotech companies lost billions in value, and it totally changed the game. Then, just a few months later, you get this truly amazing moment of unity. The leaders of the public project and the head of Celera stood right there next to each other, with President Clinton and Prime Minister Blair. And they jointly announced they had finished a working draft, the first rough sketch of the entire human genome. And the race had this incredible outcome for everyone. The crazy competition had pushed the work so far ahead that the final, super high-quality, complete sequence was finished and published in April 2003, a full 2 years ahead of the original schedule. Pretty amazing. Okay, so we've read the code, but what was it all for? I mean, beyond all the drama of the race, what were the actual goals of this project, and what did it really deliver for us? Let's circle back to that budget, $3 billion. It sounds like a ton of money, and it is, but it wasn't just spent on sequencing those A's, T's, C's, and G's.
That money actually built a whole new ecosystem for modern biology. It funded brand new faster sequencing technologies, it built these massive public databases, and it paid to sequence other organisms like mice and fruit flies so we could compare our DNA to theirs. And maybe most importantly, the project leaders had the brilliant foresight to set aside up to 5% of the entire budget just to study the ethical, legal, and social implications. They called it ELC. They knew we weren't just reading some code, we were opening a kind of Pandora's box, and we had to be ready for what was inside.
Which is a totally fair question, right? When you launch a moonshot, you really want to know if you actually made it to the moon. And well, this scorecard really tells the story. The project didn't just meet its goals, it absolutely smashed them. Look at the genetic map. That's kind of like the highway map of our genes. They aimed for a certain level of detail and ended up with one twice as good. For the physical map, think of that as the detailed street map, they wanted 30,000 landmarks and they delivered over 52,000. And the sequence itself, the most important part, they aimed to get 95% of the important stuff and hit 98% with incredible accuracy. By every single measure, the Human Genome Project was just a staggering, undeniable success. In the end, the project gave us the foundational textbook for all of 21st century biology. Having this complete reference map of a human being has totally changed how we study diseases like cancer, how we understand our own evolution, and how we develop new medicines that honestly used to just be science fiction. You know, the Human Genome Project wasn't really an endpoint. It was the starting line. It handed us the book of life, the basic text of what makes us human. The chapters we write next, about things like personalized medicine, genetic engineering, maybe even understanding consciousness itself, well, that part is now up to us.